dharmādharmau, sukhaṃ duḥkhaṃ, mānasāni na te bibho, na kartā'si, na bhoktā'si, mukta evā'si sarvadā. Righteousness and unrighteousness, pleasure and pain are purely of the mind, and they are of no concern to you. You are neither the doer nor the one who reaps the consequences of one's actions. Thus, always remain free. Parameters for righteousness or unrighteousness keep on changing as society changes. And as the boundaries of knowledge keeps expanding, what was held as righteous 1,000 years ago, leave alone 1,000 years ago, even 100 years ago, may look like outdated in the present day world. This is the problem with all the derivatives of the mind. They keep on changing. They are also justifiable only from a particular perspective or in a specific context. Your mind creates many judgments and standards of truth based upon your knowledge, observation, beliefs, and values. Since your mind and body are influenced by the presence of gunas, they influence your thinking and thereby your perceptions and judgments. They are not universal. What is dharma for you may be adharma for another. What you consider sinful may be viewed as a virtue by another. Because your values, judgments, and morality are relative, we never know with certainty whether our actions are right or wrong. Even if we look at one thing, even our knowledge, our observation, our beliefs, and our values keep on changing. So, leave alone others, leave alone the world. Even what we considered as right 25 years before may or may not be considered as right by us now, because everything changes. Our knowledge changes, our values changes. Our beliefs changes. Righteousness, when seen separate from the ultimate righteousness, that is Atma-dharma, becomes purely a factor of judgment by mind. Man gets driven by his vasanas and ego, and then whatever he does accordingly, he justifies them saying that given my condition, given my life's peculiarities, given my problems, given my situation, what I do or what I did is or was right. Not only his actions, he even judges the actions of all others and gives a verdict whether they are right or wrong. It has to be noted here that once the goal of realization and the need for equipping ourselves with the initial 4 qualifications are ignored, then it is purely one's mind which decides what is right and what is wrong, what is not right. And with this judgment and justification, whatever one takes up, he also gets the fruit of all those actions or thoughts in the material world as pleasure or pain. All the above are mind's play and results of mind's play. The use of vibho in this verse is very subtle and very important. Vibho means the Lord or the controller. As the Lord of your mind and body, you should be in control of them rather than being swayed by them. You can do it when you stop identifying with them and their actions and remain detached. Without it, you cannot be free from the modifications of your mind. Chinmaya writes, here, the teacher advises that the conflicts of good and bad and the struggles for pleasure and pain are all in fact evaluation of the mind, and therefore they belong to the mind only, never are they yours. You are nothing but the all-pervading consciousness. As the pure self, you are ever free from the conflicts and confusions of your own ego. Your involvement, we move on. Your involvement with your mind and body also makes you believe that you are making things possible and you are responsible for the actions you perform. However, if you can take one step back and look at the same events with detachment, you will realize that the world can exist without you, and you can exist without identifying yourself with your mind and body, treating them with objectivity and detachment as the field of your actions and perceptions. Without a sense of doership and without thinking whether or not one will get anything in return, the aspirant should simply devote whatever time he can in the worship of his sense of beingness. The individual ego exists so long as the mind exists. The two are interdependent. When the mind is transcended, the ego is automatically dropped. The absolute truth is that there is no such thing as mind or ego. They are both false appearances. They are all just projections. We are always free, but we imagine we are bound by the chains of the mind and ego. Self has nothing to do with mind ever. Self is never involved in any of the above, any of the doership or enjoyership of the actions, result of the actions. With both, self is unattached. When it is not the doer at all, then how can self be the one who reaps the consequences of actions which it has not undertaken? Saying that the self is the doer can be true if a barren woman can get a child. The last para of Chinmaya to conclude today's verse. Virtue and vice are the evaluations of the intellect, identifying with which the sense of doership is maintained. Happiness and sorrow are the values of the mind, identifying with which the sense of enjoyership is sustained. Thus, identifying with the intellect and the mind, the sense of doership and enjoyership gush forth from us, and they, in their confluence, become the ego in us. When once all its identification with the intellect and the mind are ended, the ego disappears to become what? To become the ever blissful self. And the ever blissful self is what? The last line of today's verse. The ever blissful self is always and ever free. Mukta evā'si sarvadā. Hari Om Tat Sat.